In this video, we're going to talk about how to set up our document, add text, add color, basically how to put all of our elements together into InDesign. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new document, and I can go File, New, or Command N, and that will open up my window for a new document. For today's demo, I'm just going to do 8.5 by 11, a letter size. I'm going to change my dimensions over here. A couple of things that you need to set up when you're setting up your document is you do need to make sure that you include facing pages. And then once again, remember, you need to make sure that your document is in a multiple of 4. So right now I'm going to do 12 pages, which would essentially be 3 spreads. So right now I've got facing pages. Make sure that's clicked on, otherwise you won't be able to see your spreads. Everything else I can go in and I can kind of manipulate later. And I can also click down here and preview it and see what it'll look like. So I'll go ahead and say create. And the first thing when you walk into InDesign is don't be alarmed when you see just a single page. If we scroll down, you'll notice that our spreads will start showing up. This one is always kind of the inside front cover or the cover of the document that you're working with. The first thing that I want to think about is my organization. So I don't necessarily use the properties um, window that much, but I do use pages a lot. Pages is really helpful because can everyone see how all my pages are laid out? It's got all of my spreads. I can also click on a page and move it around if I needed to. So if for some reason I need to kind of bring a spread a little bit closer, I can hold down Command, select 2 spreads, and then you'll see I can kind of dynamically move it as I need to. I can also add pages down at the bottom. You'll see there's a little plus sign. It'll say create new page. So I always like to start off with a certain number of pages and then I just kind of add as I go along. Now, one of the first things that you might want to be thinking about doing is adding color to your page, and maybe all of your pages have color behind them. It's pretty simple in InDesign. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to our rectangle tool, and you'll notice right here I've got a fill color. It's a little bit different than Photoshop, and then I have my stroke color. So back there I've got my stroke color. There's several ways to work with swatches in InDesign. I can double click and that brings up the color picker, which for me, I like to be a little bit more specific. So I'm going to go to Windows and I'm going to go to Color and go to Swatches. And this will open up all my swatches right here. It's preloaded with really super basic ones. I'm going to go ahead and mix my own. Um, I can say New Swatch. I can double click it and my swatch options show up. And I'd like for all of you to work not with RGB sliders, that gets a little confusing, but CMYK, so cyan, magenta, and yellow. And we'll take out the black. So let's see, what kind of color do I want? Let's go with, we'll go with magenta. But maybe not quite as a harsh magenta. We'll go ahead and say okay. So I've got my fill color set right here. I've got my rectangle set right there. And all I simply have to do is click and drag. And now I have a color on my background. I toggle back and forth between the selection tool. So right here's the selection tool. We are not going to be using the direct selection tool in InDesign. So this white arrow, try to avoid it because that'll make things a little tricky for you. You'll notice that there is a pink set of lines right here. These are my margins, which can be really helpful. If I don't want to see that, I can just simply hit W and that goes into preview mode. So right now I know that I've got a pink background, so I've got a color. You'll notice if I click and hold underneath of the shapes, I've got the ellipse tool. I can make a perfect circle by holding down Shift. Can fill it with a color. I can kind of click and drag. I can repeat it. If I hold down Option, I can click and drag and repeat that way. And of course, if I have more than this, I can also kind of go through and kind of select multiple things and click and drag and repeat as much as I need to. So I can draw shapes out. The next thing that you'll probably want to work with is your text. And this gets a little bit cumbersome in InDesign if you're kind of clicking and you end up clicking in one of your boxes or your shapes. So what I suggest that students do is that you work in layers. I'm going to go to Window and I'm going to go down to Layers, which is very similar to what we've worked with in Photoshop. Illustrator does the same thing. Now, right now, I know what layer I'm on. So everyone see how there's a blue box? I know that I'm on the blue layer. So what I'm going to call this, I can double click and I say, this is my background. And I'll say, okay. And let's say that I don't want to accidentally end up clicking on it. So what I can do over here um, is I can also lock my layer. So right here I can lock it, and this way I'm not accidentally clicking on it. And so maybe up here you want to do your text, and I'll say text. And of course down here you can pick any color under the sun that you want to pick so that you can see. Sometimes you want to pick a color that'll show up on your background a little bit better. So I'm going to pick yellow just so we can see it really well. And now I know I'm on my text layer. So I'm going to go to the text tool. And remember, text is a little bit different in InDesign in the sense that we're working with text boxes. So I'm going to do a header. And you'll notice that everything kind of starts off at the same size. If your text options don't come up, there's a couple different ways that we can do it. We can go to Window, we can go to Types and Tables, and we can bring up Character. And I tend to like to work with this mainly because it gives me a little bit more options than in the top bar. So right now, and I can select my text, and Minion Pro is not a typeface any of you should use because it's the default. And let's see, what do I want to work with? We'll make it look fancy. Oops. All right. So you'll notice that my text is really small. It's hard to read. You can select it. And either you can go here to the drop-down menu and you can resize it, or you can also do Command Shift and then your period and comma button. So sometimes I do that, especially if I'm working with something that's a little bit finicky. So right now I'm going to actually switch it to white because that black is really difficult to read. So I'm going to go back to my swatches. And you can kind of nest anything that you need to. I'm just going to change it to white just so that we can read it a little bit better. All right, so we've got our header right now. And then the other thing that you're probably going to be working with is some body copy. I'm going to make a new text box. So I can either go over to the text tool or I can just hit T on my keyboard. So I can also just hit T. I'm going to draw out another box. And right now I'm just going to fill it with some placeholder text. So I'm going to go up to Type and go down with Fill Placeholder Text. And that just gives me a good idea of what my text will look like, but it's not something that I can read. Once again, I'm going to select it because the black is difficult to read on the white background. And of course, if you already have text and content that you are already working with, you can just simply copy and paste it into InDesign. So I'm going to fill this a little bit more so I can talk about how the text boxes will work. So I can move all of this around. I can also rotate it. If I hold down Shift and I go to one of my handlebars, it'll shift um, uh, into a double cursor, and then that way I can kind of rotate or play with things like that. I can also expand my text boxes dynamically, so you'll notice as I move it, it'll fill it in different ways. And then you'll notice as I made this really skinny, one of the things that we do is we flow our text in InDesign. So you'll notice that my text is getting cut off, but there's a little red button right here with a plus, and I'm going to click that. It's going to fill into my cursor, and then I can draw another box. And then you'll notice as I'm working, that will dynamically update. So if I need to change one, it'll show up here. If I need to change another one, it'll show up there. So you'll notice that I can tell what layer I'm on. I know that I am on the back or on the text layer because it's yellow. I've locked my layer behind that. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to nest this right now. I'm going to preview it. So I'm just going to hit W. So this is something that I do a lot. I hit W so that I can kind of see what's happening. I can make a decision about it. The other thing that you guys are also working with is being able to place imagery in things that you've been doing by hand. So once again, we never ever copy and paste. We're going to go File, and we're going to go to Place. And we'll use Zaya's image. So we'll go to it. Of course, if I make any changes in Photoshop, it'll update dynamically. Right now, I'm just going to click once. You'll notice it's really super big, so I might actually want to draw this out a little bit. Um, and there we go. So now I've got an image placed in there. I've got graphic elements. I have my text. I can hit W to kind of preview it and move things around and play with it however I want to. And then always make sure that with your images that you're not stretching them or distorting them. So making sure that everything like that looks really pretty good. The thing to remember about InDesign is that it's a page layout program. So I'm going to save the demo file, which will only save as an InDesign document, which you can only open in InDesign. So you can't send it to somebody else and they can open it. When I'm ready to send this to print, what's happening is it's referencing these links. So remember we talked about links yesterday. And if I go to links, you'll see right there is my Photoshop document. You don't want to move that file. If you move that file, a warning symbol will come up and say that your link has moved. And when you print it, it'll be very pixelized. So what we want to make sure we want to do when we're ready to do our test prints is we are going to package it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down, you'll see there's Save As. And instead of doing a save as, we are going to package, which is down here. We're also going to work with print booklet as well, but right now we're going to package it. So when I hit package, what that means is it's gathering your InDesign file. It's also gathering all of your typefaces. And that's really important for when you are working with a printer. So right now you can say it's copying my fonts, my link graphics, everything that I need is included right there. And it's actually making a PDF for me as well. And I'll say package. It gives you a scary warning about how you shouldn't copy fonts that don't belong to you. And I'll say okay. And I've got a little bit of a problem. I'll have to look up and see what that is, but you guys shouldn't. So when you package it, you have a nice folder that has your original file in it, and then it'll also have all of your linked documents as well. We'll talk later on in the class about how we're going to work with the print booklet command.